Sayuri-san, thank you so much for kindly agreeing to be part of this interview. This is Miss Sayuri Romei, who's based in Washington, D.C., and I thought she would be a wonderful guest for this podcast, which is all about interviewing multicultural people and how they overcame any hardships and how they found answers to really big life questions. So, again, thank you for being part of this. Um,
Thank you so much, Shiori-san. Good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me to your podcast today. I think it's a great initiative, and I'm really looking forward to our chat. I feel very honored. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So I
Yeah,
was wondering if we could start by asking you, where you're born and raised, and what was your identity growing up?
yeah, sure. I was born in Italy, in the south of Italy, in a region called Calabria, which is the toe of the boot near Sicily. And my dad is from there, and but I was raised in Rome, Italy. My mom is Japanese, so I definitely was raised in a multicultural environment, and they sent me to French school. So, to your question, what was your identity growing up? To be completely honest, I never really asked myself that question.
Mm,
So I kind of struggle answering that right now. I learned to speak multiple languages when I was little. So I grew up speaking them naturally. I'm going to say this though. In Italy, most people assumed that I was Asian. And
mm,
in Japan, most people assumed that I was a foreigner. So I think that part could be, yeah, a little frustrating to explain sometimes, or to be
mhm,
viewed as an Italian or a Japanese. But I think I just considered myself both Italian and Japanese.
mhm,
When I lived in Paris for my first bachelor's degree, I remember considering France my new home. And
mhm,
now that I've been living in the US for about 8 years. I feel like it's become my home too.
mhm,
So I guess you can just say I adapt pretty easily to new
mhm,
realities.
mhm,
So yeah, I'm not sure, but probably to respond concisely, I always consider myself both Italian and Japanese.
mhm, mhm. That's really wonderful because I think, from my experience, it's really hard to feel positive about being both. I think when I'm feeling good about myself, I feel like I'm both, like and. But when you're in one country and you're always seen as an outsider, sometimes that can feel lonely too. Did you ever feel that way, or were you always surrounded by supportive friends and family and you didn't have to feel that lonely?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever felt lonely. I think it was just annoying sometimes to have to explain um, why you look different
Mm,
to other kids. But kids are also, they can be very cruel, but they can also be very um, malleable in the sense
mhm,
that they receive that kind of explanation and they're like,
mhm,
oh, I see, okay. And then they they want to hang out with you. But
mhm,
in the 90s, as I was growing up even in Rome, which is a capital city,
mhm,
it was pretty provincial, and kids were all Italian
mhm,
ethnically. Italy now is much more multicultural. There are a
mhm,
lot of Asian kids. There are a lot
mhm,
of, especially from China, but also from other parts of Asia,
mhm,
um, lots of African kids. And I think schools are much more multicultural now. So I think that would be a different experience for a child now. And I used to spend most of my summers in rural Japan at my grandma's home
mhm,
in Toyama. And so I was going to school there. And of course, the kids had never seen a foreigner before. And they were very curious to talk to me, to
mhm,
so to say, I did get weird questions as well, and they were very interested in um, getting to know my dad as well, the
Mm,
foreigner, the
mhm.
Italian. So at times it can be a little annoying and having to always explain, answer the same questions. But yeah, thankfully, I feel really lucky that I never had a lonely or bad experience.
Mhm. Well, I think it's wonderful. I think it really speaks to your personality. You seem like such a positive person, and it sounds like you were able to make friends wherever you went. So that sounds amazing. And I was wondering, earlier you mentioned that at one point you considered being based in France, but now you're here in Washington, D.C. Would you mind explaining what the transition was and how you ended up being in the U.S.?
Yeah, sure. So, as I mentioned, I grew up in Rome. But I first went to Japanese kindergarten. So my first language was Japanese. And then they transitioned me into French kindergarten and then full-time French school. So all my studies were in the French system. It's a unique situation where I'm Italian, but I I lived in this French bubble for school in Rome,
Hmm.
so I never felt completely Roman either.
Hmm.
Um, but of course, I was studying in French, but I never felt completely French either. And then in the summer, my parents always took me to Japan to spend the whole summer there. So yeah, of course, a little bit of adjustment, but as a kid, you just adjust pretty easily. So yeah, I grew up between these three countries, and then after graduating from my from French high school, it was just natural for me to go to Paris to continue my studies. And I actually studied English language and literature
Hmm.
at first. That was my first bachelor's degree at Sorbonne. I started studying English when I was in middle school, around the time I was 13, and it was my first love. I loved
Hmm.
learning English, speaking in English, and learning the songs, the pop songs in English, and reading novels in English. That was just really, really fun for me, and it came really easily. And so that's why I just decided to pursue my passion, and I started studying English language, literature, and culture at the Sorbonne University in Paris. So I did that for 3 years until graduation, and after that I went back to Rome, to Italy, to focus on something else because I wanted to add something. I felt like languages are a great tool of cross-cultural communication, but I wanted something else as well. And you know, it
Hmm.
was the early 2000s, lots of political events in the world. So that's when I started studying international relations. And of
Hmm.
course, it was going to be not just politics, but international relations because I had a multicultural background. I did the rest of my studies in Rome, my second bachelor's degree in political science, master's degree. And then during my PhD, yes, I've been in school for a long time.
You're
I
amazing.
was. I was. I'm done now.
No second
Hopefully.
PhD? Just kidding.
No thanks. But yeah, during my PhD time, I had the opportunity to apply for pre-doctoral fellowships, and that's how I landed a fellowship at Stanford in California.
Mm.
I wanted to come to the US because my boyfriend at the time was American. So I just wanted to be closer to him. But also at the same time, I had a really good excuse because my topic was US Japan relations. So I thought it was a really good way to study that topic from the US point of view. So
Mhm.
that's how I landed in California for a year. And after that, I moved to Washington, D.C. To join my husband now. So yeah, and I've been here for 7 years in D.C.
And do you think you'll stay here for a bit? Do you like Washington?
I do. I really like Washington. When I came here 7 years ago, I was really amazed by how international the this town is. And it's not as big as other cities like New York or Rome or Tokyo. It's a really small city, and sometimes it doesn't feel like a city, but
Mhm.
I just do love the fact that everyone is very driven, everyone is super ambitious, and I just met a lot of very interesting people here, very
Mm.
capable people, people who are very competent, who have so many good qualities, so many good interesting backgrounds, and who speak multiple languages. And also, it helps that DC is the only city that doesn't give me seasonal allergies.
That's funny. It sounds like you're really adaptable. Like no matter which environment you're in, you're able to make yourself at home, and I think that really speaks to your personality. Um, I wanted to change gears a little bit because you mentioned how you studied literature first and then you went into international politics. But what I'm also curious about is you're an amazing, amazing illustrator, and you published this book with your mom when you were younger. And so you have this really, really artistic side, and also, but you're able to be a panelist and a columnist about nuclear policy or like something like really, I don't know, difficult and hard like that. How do you keep a balance between those two, like artistic side as well as your more, I don't know, like hard
Yeah,
subjects?
you're right. Yeah, I that's a good question. I don't really have a good answer. And yeah, my full-time job, my day job is being a senior fellow for Japan at GMF at the German Marshall Fund right now. So
Mm,
I'm working on these hard security issues, and my background, as you mentioned, is in nuclear deterrence and U.S.-Japan relations. It's very different from the artistic world that I'm also drawn to. I wish I had more time to draw, but yeah, I'm still continuing to keep that up, and I don't know how to keep the balance, to be honest. I feel like being an illustrator has helped me in releasing some tension and feeling less stressed out in moments where I had a lot of work
mm,
or had to study a lot or something throughout my life. So it was a really good outlet, and that really started to become a second job. Yeah, I'm just lucky enough to have kept those two sort of careers. The illustrator one is not as it's not a day job, but I do want to keep it. In fact, this week, this month, I have another commission
wow.
for actually a Japanese woman who lives in Arlington, which is very
Oh,
interesting.
that is really
Yes,
cool.
yeah, and
Wow.
so I think it's a way to keep me sane and motivated and connected to my roots and connected to the things that I love doing. I can't imagine going through my life without art
Mm,
in general. Art is a very major part of my life, and it's always been that way. And I've always drawn since I was a toddler. I never stopped really. So yeah, I never considered leaving, academia or think tank world or my day job in general to just focus on art.
mm,
Um, I don't think I'll do that anytime soon.
okay.
Maybe when I'm retired, but
Mm,
it's uh, it's something I want to keep in my life.
mhm, mhm. Why is that, if I may ask? Why have you decided to pursue these harder subjects in terms of your career as opposed to art and literature?
Um, I don't know why, to be honest. These security issues really interest me, and it's another way of using my brain and using
Mm-hmm.
my language skills, and it's another way of connecting with, well, in my case, to Japan,
Mm-hmm.
with Japan, and now that in this new job that I started this past week, actually, I am focusing on U.S., Japan, Europe,
Mm-hmm.
trilateral relations, which is, I feel like it's really perfect for me
Mm-hmm.
because
Absolutely.
it really allows me to uh, to connect with all three of my identities, I would say. So I'm just very passionate about this work, and
Mm-hmm.
I cannot imagine leaving it. And the illustration part is it's just as fun, but it's just a different it's a different way to use your brain, and also I'm just not confident that I would be able to make a career out of it.
Okay.
At least not right now. There's so many talented people out there, and I yeah, I don't think I would have the patience to pursue that kind of artistic vocation right now.
Thank you so much. Going back a little bit, you grew up with the Italian and Japanese identity, and yet um, you decided to marry someone who's American, which is a third, yet another culture. Well, on top of the French language and culture that you also grew up with. So how do you um, continue to learn about these different cultures and get used to it? Because when I think about having my own family, it's language is really key for me, and I think it's important to be able to speak what you're truly feeling. And I think an acquired language and being able to speak that so comfortably that you're able to have a family in that language is just so amazing to me. So I was wondering if you wouldn't mind um, telling me a little bit about how you met him and yeah, how you ended up marrying him, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I agree with you, Shiori-san. Operating in a second, third, fourth language is definitely difficult. It's very tiring, and yeah, it's not easy on a daily basis, right? But this was my choice, and I have to deal with it. Jokes aside, yeah, I met my husband. He's American. I met him in Rome, actually,
Mm,
in Italy, near Rome. It was at a conference that he was running on nuclear policy issues,
mm,
and I was a participant there. This was 10 years ago now. Again, he's American, but he grew up in the UK.
mm,
He studied German at school, so he speaks German as well.
mm.
He's very international. He has traveled everywhere since he was a child. So I do feel like it was easy to connect with him in that sense. He is very open-minded, very flexible. So the dating part hasn't been difficult at all, and the marriage part, we got married 8 years ago now, but
Mm,
it hasn't been difficult. Of course, there were some like minor cultural differences,
mhm,
like for example, it took us a long time to figure out that we were not really on the same page when talking about movies because um, in Italy, like Italy
mm.
has a like tends to translate the movie titles completely to
Okay.
something very different.
Mhm,
And when we were talking about movies with my husband, um, he kept saying, "Well, don't you know this movie? This is really famous, super famous." And I was like, "No, never heard of this." And then he starts telling me the plot, and I'm like, oh, of course, that's the red tiger or something. And I'm
What is the red tiger, by the way?
I,
Or are you
I
just making
just
it up? Okay.
making it up right now, but it's just Italy translates its American movies titles in a completely different way. So kind of minor thing was
Mhm,
at first there was that kind of cultural clash,
mhm,
but
mhm,
yeah, to be honest, I feel like I can express myself well in English. I feel very comfortable operating
mhm,
in English now. But when I'm tired, I do notice that I blurt out things in Japanese or in Italian,
mhm,
or like when I hurt myself. These kind of reactions
mhm.
are natural reactions, instinctive reactions are come out in Japanese or in Italian sometimes. And for example, I often talk in my sleep, and my husband tells
Oh,
me it's either in Japanese or in Italian or in French, but
oh
never
my
in
gosh,
English.
that's amazing.
It's very, very funny. I don't remember it, but
Mhm,
yeah, I do catch myself saying stuff in Italian or in French or in Japanese in the
mhm,
morning. So the brain's really fascinating. But at this point, I speak English every single day of my life with my husband at work. So I'm now very comfortable operating in English.
mhm,
But when we have our son, who will be born soon, he will have to learn even more languages than I did as a kid.
mhm. Oh my goodness. Wow.
He will be raised here in the US, but we really plan on him to be able to speak Japanese and Italian as well,
Mhm,
at least those two.
mhm,
So we're gonna have to figure out ways that that can be possible. But I do feel like cultural differences between me and my husband, of course, they're there, but there's nothing that's impossible to overcome.
mhm, mhm,
So far so good, but when a child comes in the picture, it's going to be a challenge. But we'll just try our best.
mhm, mhm. Good. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I'm just always amazed at how adaptable you are, and I think you have a real talent for languages. Well, obviously, because you're quadrilingual, maybe more. But to be able to do this amazing professional work in all these multiple languages is so wonderful. And you're just so humble about it too, and always positive, and I'm always so inspired by you.
Well, that's very nice of you, Shiori-san. Languages are really, really difficult to keep up. When you are a child, you just learn them naturally. But keeping them up as an adult, any language is extremely hard. For
Mhm,
example, I mentioned that I speak English at work and at home now. Thankfully I do keep up my Japanese, because I deal with Japan a lot, with Japanese people all the time. I go to
mhm,
Japan at least twice a year. I have family there, and of course, I speak Japanese with my mom. So that's good. But and I write emails as well, daily, in
mhm,
Japanese. I just try to keep up with, of course, newspapers in Japanese, novels, and I try to force myself to pick up a pen and write in Japanese. Otherwise, I feel like the kanji, the characters are super easy to
yes.
forget. You can type them, that's easy, but writing them, it's just something that stays with you because you've learned it as a kid, but also at the same time, it's very easy to forget. And Italian also, that I grew up speaking, and I only speak it with my dad right now, and
Oh.
with a few friends, but I feel like that's not really enough. And
Mhm,
even when I speak on the phone with my dad, I do catch myself forgetting some phrases or expressions, and um, it's that can be a sad moment for sure, and it's just very frustrating. It's something that it never happened to me before, but in the past few years, it's definitely it's happened, and so languages are very advantageous. It's nice to have them. I feel really lucky and grateful that my parents raised me speaking these languages, but as an adult, you definitely need to keep them up.
Mhm. Absolutely. Do you find yourself conducting yourself differently in, say, the four languages that we talked about, French, Italian, Japanese, and English? Do you find yourself like code switching a little bit, and what's the difference?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. My voice changes. My mannerisms change. My expressions change also. I feel like in English, my voice is lower, and
Mm-hmm.
the tone of my voice is
Hmm.
lower.
Agreed.
And um, and in Italian, I use my hands a lot more.
Oh my gosh,
Uh,
really?
I do use my hands,
That's
and
funny.
my expressions are very different because
Mm.
you speak each language with a different part of your throat,
Oh, interesting.
of your bones, right? Of your
Mm-hmm.
muscles
Mm-hmm.
in the mouth. Every language has its own way to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So you use different muscles,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how you end up with three different personalities. And it's not something that's you know I necessarily notice, but but my husband, for example, or even my parents or my friends, they do see that change, and because the way also the Japanese language is structured, the kind of relationships you have with someone who's Japanese is very different with the kind of interaction you would have in English. The whole honorific and whatnot, that definitely impacts the way, not just the actual words, but also
Mm-hmm.
the way you behave. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, in Japanese, of course, I immediately use my nodding and my head, my bowing a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
my husband even noticed that when I speak in Japanese and I laugh, I do put my hand over
Oh,
my mouth.
really?
Yes, which I do
Interesting.
not do in English and in
Right.
Italian,
Yeah.
which is so strange if you think about it. But yeah, there are definitely changes in my body language.
Thank you. Did you ever struggle with going between all these different cultures? Or, I mean, so far it sounds like you've always had a way to find answers within yourself or by interacting with others. But have you ever had like any difficulties or hardships like um, growing up in all these different, yeah, languages and cultures?
Um, Luckily, I would say that there weren't any major challenges. Um, for example, this is not a real challenge because I do it happily. But being the only one who speaks many languages, I often have to play interpreter
Oh,
in
I see.
situations.
Hmm.
And when you marry an American who doesn't speak Italian or Japanese, and when you have parents who don't speak English, Christmas and Thanksgiving can
Oh my
become
goodness.
really, really exhausting for me. And I'm not joking. At the end of those holidays, I usually lose my voice
Oh my God, I'm
because
so sorry.
well, I do it happily, right? Because it's
Mhm,
family, and
mhm,
I love all these people.
mhm,
But yeah, I do have to translate everything constantly for everyone in my family,
mhm.
including jokes, which can be tricky and awkward because when translated, especially with the delayed reactions.
Right.
So yeah, but you know what? Our family has gotten used to it. My mother-in-law is studying Italian. My
Oh,
mother is
nice.
studying English. So
Nice.
that's a big help. But in general, challenges growing up, I don't think I can honestly talk about anything significant. I've been really, really lucky to have
Mhm.
people who have been nice to me, friendly, and supportive. So yeah, I can't think of anything really.
Okay, that's wonderful. Would you say that you've always been comfortable with who you are then? You've never had to struggle to fit in into whatever community you were in at that moment?
I think so. I think so. I
Okay.
don't know why, but I've always been very, very comfortable. I think it helps that I'm an extrovert and I love people. I love talking to
Mhm,
people.
mhm,
Since I was a toddler, I would just, I loved the playground, and I would just target some kids and just go to them and talk to them in
mhm,
whatever language a toddler can talk.
mhm.
And I made a few kids cry for sure because I was too forward.
No way. No way. You're so nice. My gosh.
No, seriously, I've always loved interacting with people, and I think that's a really important part of my life.
Mhm,
I am interested in other people's stories, and yeah, so I've always been, I guess, flexible and adaptable and comfortable with what I am. I'm fully aware that I was I, I was lucky to be raised in a multicultural environment, and I just see it as a huge plus.
okay, that's great. Um, would you have any advice for people who are also growing up in a multicultural environment? You said that it's really your outgoing personality that has helped, but is that something that you would um, recommend to others? Like try to be friendly and yeah, what would you say to them?
Well, of course, everyone has their own personality, and it's hard to change. If you're an introvert, if you're not that outgoing, that's fine. That's just your personality, right? It's okay to be an introvert as well, of course, and to be happy with on your own. That's totally fine. I think what I can say is being multicultural is always a plus. It's never a minus.
Mm,
And being multicultural or having multiple identities, cultural identities, definitely does not feel the same for everyone, and it doesn't look the same for each of us. Um, but you can make your own unique experience from that, and there will also be different times throughout your life where you will feel more, for example, Japanese than American, right?
mhm,
Or vice versa, and that's totally okay. That's just part of who we are. So it doesn't have to be an identity that's set in time
mhm,
either. I think the key point is really that having different identities, being multicultural, cultural is always a plus.
mhm. Well, thank you so much. I think I personally really needed to hear that. I may be able to tell that I'm definitely an introvert, and I think that's one of the reasons I may have struggled with it in my childhood, like
Mm-hmm.
making friends and feeling like
Mm-hmm.
an outsider no matter where I was. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm really inspired by your experience, and I've learned a lot because I guess I assumed that everyone um, had a bit of a painful experience. I mean, it's always positive, but there's always some struggle, not just in terms of language, but I think socially in the classroom and such. But it's really refreshing to hear that that's not always the case. And also, it was really helpful for me to hear that you said that you might feel a certain way in one stage of your life, but that's not permanent. It feels like a really positive thing that we can continue to change if we work hard at it. So thank you
Yeah,
so much.
and that's a good thing, to not feel like set in an identity in forever, you
Mhm.
know? It's a good thing to be able to change like that,
Yeah.
to change how you feel, and that's part of being multicultural. I feel like multicultural people are also very diverse, and
Yeah.
we all have such different experiences.
Mhm.
It's really interesting, and that's why this podcast is so important. I'm very,
Thank you.
very curious. To be completely honest, I'm always seeking out people who are like me,
Mhm.
multicultural, or like half something, or double, I would say.
Mhm.
And so I'm always very fascinated by these multicultural people. And I just want to find out more about their experiences. So thank you so much for doing this. This is really important.
Thank you so much, especially for being part of this. I really feel honored that you trusted me to do this. So thank you so very much.